Call us to order. Thank you, everyone. And we will begin with a roll call. Jessica, will you lead us in a roll call, please?
Today is June 22nd, 2022. The time is 4:39. And Linda Nairn. You have a quorum. Thank you, Jessica.
Start with a silent meditation. Just allow us to bring focus to our agenda and the work that we have to do today. Okay, thank you, everyone. A quick reminder, we are streaming this meeting, so I'll ask fellow trustees if you have a comment or something to share, if you can be sure to turn your mic on. And next, we'll move to the approval of minutes. Copy of the minutes were sent to you in the packet and should, ahead of time, and should also be in the packet ahead of you. So I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
From Marcy. Jessica's going to lead us in a roll call vote. She's already there in place.
Jean Brady is not present. Joanne Harris is not present. Josie Martinez.
Aye.
Andrea Sanchez Muniz.
Aye.
Jeremy Lundin.
Aye.
Ferdinanda Cardenas. She's not present. Paul Stahl is not present. Marcy Ince.
Present, or yes?
Judy Cruz.
Aye.
Linda Nairn. And Jaspreet Kaur. The motion passes.
Next, we have time for public comments, and I understand that there was a public comment submitted. You can stay up there, Jessica, and read that for us.
The following public comment was submitted via online form to the library board from Eli Danzy, submitted on May 30th, 2022. The comment is, the Star Wars character encyclopedia found in juvenile section, written by Simon B. Croft et al., on page 77 shows two women kissing and refers to her, quote, wife, unquote. This is child sex abuse and as this refers to sodomy and is graphic sexual behavior by two same-sex attracted females. How appalling for my son to find this in a library book. We have been lifelong library members, but are continually disgusted by the children's books and the SAPL library referencing to sodomy, sex, vampires, socialist, communist ideology, anti-American, and anti-life beliefs. May God have mercy upon you all. That concludes the public comments.
Next, we'll move to a report from the library chair. So Paul could not be here today, and I'm in his place. I will report briefly that I had, in addition to visiting my local district branch libraries, where I saw lots of excitement around the launching of the summer reading program. And although I did not participate in the adult reading program, I will admit that the graphics got me really interested in that as well, so that was really great to see. I also visited McCreeless Library along with Linda and Judy for a naming committee meeting, which we'll talk about later in the agenda. But having not visited McCreeless during its grand reopening, I was just completely blown away at how beautiful McCreeless is. It looks fantastic. I was questioning Dale on whether the ceiling had been moved, which of course it hadn't, but it really feels like a wide open space. So if you have not had an opportunity to visit McCreeless yet, it's just fantastic and really a great example of how our budget and bond money can make dramatic transformations in some of the branches. I'll ask now if there are any other trustees that would like to share Any updates?
Okay. Well, I went to the Brookhollow, take this off. I went to the Brookhollow Friends meeting, and I'm just so impressed with that group. It's bigger than it's ever been. They're very enthusiastic, and they're going full head with their plans and thoughts, and there's a new president in there. It was actually Pat's daughter, I believe, who's the new president, Pat Bjornson, who they named the room after. But it's a lovely group. I think they have the branch manager is dynamic. She's added so much. I did watch McCreeless, and the library looked beautiful. I mean, I'm just so impressed with the libraries, you know. But so I was glad to see you all there, and it was fun to see it, even through watching through a lens. But that's about it.
So I was able to go to McCreeless twice for the summer kickoff, which I was very impressed with. Oh gosh, I think that came off.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with the renovation. It was just like a huge transformation. And then also for the naming committee, for the meeting room for McCreeless, I was able to go again. And then at the mayor's kickoff for the summer reading program, my kids were able to sign up for the summer program. And I will say that bingo, my son was just drawn to it for the adult one. And he literally accomplished like most of the things on there within like 2 weeks. So I was like, wow. And then made me take him back to, even though I was like, okay, well, it's for adults, but he still loved it. And then I was able to go to Cody to see Opera San Antonio, which I guess they're visiting different libraries with that, and it's incredible. So if you guys get a chance, it is not even just like a couple of songs. It's like various songs in like 6 different languages. There was such a great turnout. The kids were blown away because I don't think parents would necessarily take their kids to go see the opera, but this was such a great program for kiddos. And the greatest part was that 2 of the singers, I think there was like 5 singers, 2 of them are local, which was really nice, and it kind of gave the kids a kind of a insight into, oh, how did you start singing and things like that, and they had a little Q&A afterwards, so check it out, it's incredible. So that's what I did.
So, unfortunately, I was working summer school the day of the summer reading kickoff, go figure. But I do appreciate that we are able to log in and watch live. So I had it up on my computer, and a couple of the summer school students were asking, hey, what's that? What's going on? Who's that guy? So great introduction to being able to show students who our mayor is. Then they asked where it was, so I then got to share about McCreeless Library, compared it to Cortez, which is just down the street. And they were really interested in, there's a summer reading program. I was like, yes, there is. Again, these are our kids who are at summer school, so they didn't get a lot of the memos at the end of the year that this goes on. So I told them, you can go back and you can watch this on YouTube. And there's other things that you can watch from the public library. So they were really excited about that. And then they looked at each other and was like, let's get, our reading teacher to show us during class. I was like, go ahead, you ask them, because it's showing passion for books. And if anything, it's keeping them engaged and wanting them to be in those classrooms and listen and participate. So I really am thankful that we're able to see things online. And same as Marcy, I watched the naming committee meeting. Y'all looked lovely on it. And I was really excited to see how the citizens in that community utilized all forms of giving their input. So it wasn't just a whole bunch of people there talking. They submitted forms, they submitted emails. It was really great to see that everybody's voice that wanted to be heard was heard. So I really appreciated that.
Yes, I've made sure to put all the summer reading program information on our Google Classroom for my elementary school, so there's great enthusiasm about that. And I'm anxious to see what the results will be at our school as far as how many of our kids participated. I visited, made the rounds to my 3 libraries, and especially hung out at McCreela's, and I'm claiming that corner reading room as my own because it's like my dream library. If I had a room at my house, I would want it to look just like that. It's so beautiful and cozy and surrounded by books, and it's just perfect. I attended the naming committee, and as Andrea said, really impressed with the community. Not surprising that they know that they can express themselves and make their ideas known, and we had really good feedback from our community. Attended the Friends meeting virtually. We actually showed up, but a little bit of a mix-up. But there were a few of us that hung out there at Collins Garden and got to know each other and recruited a couple more people while we were there. So it worked out very, very well. Also went to our missions branch friends group meeting. We had a work day at McCreela's with the McCreela's friends and got this back room area all McCreela's friends.
Around to visit my different branches, and I'm happy to see them settling down and ready to do the summer and getting ready for everything. And I just think our libraries are such a blessing for San Antonio, and it's really nice. And I was talking to my city councilman today and encouraging him to go to the library too, because he gets into streets and drainage too much, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. But anyway, but hopefully the budget thing will go well.
I just went and visited all my libraries, spent some time just looking around and spending a little bit more time at Bazon since its recent renovations, and also got a chance to visit Cody Branch Library, so different library I'd never been to before, so really happy to visit over there as well. And that's it for me.
You all for sharing your updates. And I would be remiss if I did not mention, as you all are visiting those different branches, I'm sure you noticed the signs for the budget that are up with the QR code. I noticed them, I think, at every library. I actually noticed them at quite a few of the libraries that I visited. So just a reminder as you're communicating with your network and sharing, just to continue to encourage, because the budget cycle never stops. Next on the agenda is a library director's report. Ramiro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a written report in your packet, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but I do want to add a couple of items, highlight a couple of items that is not in the report. On May 2nd, City Manager Eric Walsh visited the McCreela's Branch Library. That week was Public Services Worker Recognition Week, and the City Manager made an effort to visit several city locations, not only libraries, but he did pick the McCreela's, or we suggested the McCreela's Branch Library, since we had made some renovations and improvements there at the McCreela's, which you all have talked about. Assistant City Manager David McCary also joined us at this meeting. We visited with staff, and this was an opportunity again to acknowledge and recognize the work of our employees. So we were very happy that the city manager was there. On May 12th, City Council adopted the Freedom to Read resolution. This resolution was championed by Councilwoman Sandoval, but had the support of all the City Council. It's a resolution supporting the library's efforts, including the board and staff, to push back against any efforts by anyone, any entity or anyone to ban or request that we remove books from our library collection. In addition to that, or as a segue to that, on June 29th, we have an event with Mayor Nuremberg at the Bazon Branch Library, where we will be together celebrating and advocating freedom to read In other words, individuals' right to read whatever they wish. We will be championing that, and we will be also promoting the fact that we have books in our collections that have been banned, and there will be displays in almost every library location. And we will bring attention to, again, to books that need to be read or should be available to be read, rather. Also, another highlight is we had been meeting with the stakeholders of the Memorial Branch Library. The Amigos, which is their friend support group, had approached us, as well as some community members, community leaders. They were concerned about the fact that we were providing interim service through a mobile unit. That was a plan when we shut down the library for renovation. At that time, we looked for other entities, facilities where we could partner, which we've done in the past. And in fact, we do that for Westfall and for Forest Hills and other libraries. So what we call the library on the go, which is the mobile unit, was being used for interim service. But as the summer got hotter, there were some concerns about, rightly so, about staff and not having access to bathrooms and so on. Long story short, we worked with the community, we listened to them. There were two options that were identified where we could relocate our interim services from Memorial Branch Library to an actual facility. We talked to the West Side Family YMCA, and we also looked at the St. Mary's University campus, specifically the archives building there in St. Mary's. After going through a vetting process, the St. Mary's University site was selected, and we have transitioned interim services to that location. So I wanted to share that with you. In your packets, in Friday's packet, we included a letter from two individuals expressing concerns or their objection to our efforts to promote Pride Month. I have responded, and there's a copy of the letter of my response to this particular couple. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, that I have responded to the concerns expressed by the Bradys. And finally, the other highlight I wanted to share with you, in light of the tragedy in Uvalde and other mass shootings, we have, and this will be led by Kathy Donnelly, Assistant Director, we will be offering additional training for our employees on active shooter, active threat training. There's a curriculum that has been designed in coordination with SAPD and others, and that training will be offered in the next couple of months to all of our employees. I wanted to share that with you. A question had been raised by Paul Stahl, our board chair, regarding what we were doing in terms of providing training to our staff. So I wanted to share that with you. And lastly, we've already started we started the budget development process, but we're now at the staff level where we're meeting with the Office of Management and Budget, which we have already met. It went very well. In fact, we didn't need a follow-up meeting, which had been scheduled. Now we're waiting to meet with the city manager. Right now, it's tentatively scheduled for July 6th, a meeting with the city manager to review our proposed 2023 budget. That concludes my report. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Do we have any questions for Ramiro? Thank you for that update and report and for the copies of this letter. Always appreciate, Ramiro, you and your staff handling a number of these concerns that come regarding the operations of the branch. So I think having a prompt and quick response is most appreciated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm remiss if I did not recognize there are two staff members that are new to the team, to the Director's Office team. So I want to recognize first Rachel Gallup, who's our Interim Executive Secretary, and Leticia Vela, who's Administrative Assistant. She should be back there. So we welcome both to our team. They have been extremely helpful and have provided valuable assistance to our office. As you recall, Lynn left the San Antonio Public Library, and so we're happy to have both Rachel and Leticia.
Thank you, and welcome to both of you.
budget report. It is located on page 71 if you're viewing online, or on the green sheets in your packet. So one of the first things I wanted to point out was that the second column should actually read revised budget, because this column has been updated to reflect that mid-year budget ordinance adjustment that I had spoke to you all about last month. That was approved by council on May 19th. The adjustment was a reduction in our, bless you, operating budget of about $326,000, which represents just under 1% of our total approved budget. So this was for known savings in the personnel category due to vacancies, and some savings in the utility area. So as stated last month, this is not going to affect our ability to provide services this year or to continue operations. So as of the end of May, 67% of the fiscal year had elapsed, and we were at 67% spent. That's including encumbrances, or 63% without them. So we are slightly behind in spending, but that's mainly due to timing differences. So that's my very brief report, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Rental of equipment and the fees to professional contract, I think that's contractors. What's causing those to continue to rise, or are they one-time occurrences?
So under rental of equipment, we have had some AC issues at certain branches like Yetta, where we are renting units to cool the staff area. So that was not known a couple of months ago when I went through the whole revised estimates for the department. So that's that category. Fees to pro, that's where we categorize all of our security guard expenditures. So if we have, building equipment that fails, we station overnight guards. And so that's just a constant movement. We never know when those kind of things are going to happen. Was there any other one in particular? Yeah, that line item, the budget is very small, so any kind of overage is going to seem, wildly crazy. Ultimately, that is the charge that the city provides for the radios that our facilities group wears. And so it's just like a city radio that broadcasts different messages. So they probably did some type of system upgrade or maintenance that just wasn't known. And so, yeah.
I guess if those pieces, are some of those things that, like the radios, for instance, things that we might see the following year that would be added into the budget for the next fiscal year?
We probably won't see an increase in that budget. I know that, for certain things, if it's like a contractual increase, we submit for mandates for increases. But basically, bottom line, we do have savings in other areas that we use to fund those smaller overages.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next is a report from the executive committee, and the executive committee did meet. We met on June 14th to set the agenda for this meeting. Next, we have a report from the budget committee, and the budget committee actually did not meet this last month, but Kathy has an update on the budget.
And just Breed and Romero did my work for me, because you've mentioned a couple of things that have happened. So the budget committee did not meet, but we did get the signs for all of the library locations to put in the yard, to encourage people to take the survey, as you had mentioned, just Breed. And then we had a very successful first staff level budget prep meeting with Office of Management and Budget, and David McCary, as Romero had mentioned, so successful, we don't have to have a second prep meeting, so that's always a good sign. And so the only thing I'll add is that the community budget meetings have been a little bit more informal this year. And what's been happening is rather than the city kind of centralizing that and scheduling district by district meetings for only budget, the council offices have been piggybacking on some of their community meetings and adding the topic of budget to those meetings. And then departments are kind of being invited as the council offices wish. So it's a little bit more informal this year in terms of the budget meetings, but that topic is being discussed in some of the city council office community meetings that they have scheduled, just in case you're wondering what happened with that. And then the survey's ongoing, as you all know. All right.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kathy. And it's a great reminder for my fellow trustees too, for some of the involvement that we have with like neighborhood associations or with some of the other groups in our, that might be based in our district. I know like the neighborhood association on, in the north side spans districts 8, 9, and 10, but they have been hosting budget as one of the topics. We also talk about streets and drainage quite a bit too, Linda. But it's nice to have, I find it helpful to like get a line into what the sentiment, the community sentiment is by attending some of those as well. So thank you, Kathy, for reminding us about where those meetings occur. Next, we will hear from the Facilities Committee. Andrea?
Committee did meet. Who's going to be the lucky one?
That would be good. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, as Andrea mentioned, the Facilities Committee did meet on June 8th. We had 3 items on the agenda. There's 2 action items that will be coming up later in the agenda this afternoon, and then we're going to go over some project updates right now. So the first one we have would be the Bazon Branch Library. As Jeremy had mentioned, it reopened a few weeks back. It had some flooring replacements, parking lot improvements, restroom renovations, sidewalks, exterior improvements. A lot of good stuff in this project. I did want to mention that this project was essentially staff-driven in the improvements that we made in the location, and so I wanted to give a lot of credit to Elma and her team and Jim over there, the manager over there, because they did a really good job. They presented a plan to us about 4 years ago that they wanted to move some locations in the building, and we worked with that over the years, and we developed a plan to make it happen, and now we're going to see the fruits of the labor. As Jeremy has said, it's a beautiful place to walk through, so if you have a chance to stop by. We reopened to the public on June 4th. Comments have all been positive. Contractor is still completing some punch list items. We are working very hard to get everything finished up before the mayor's visit on June 29th, so we'll be working on that very, very closely. So the first part of the renovation, we decided to start looking at the areas of the building that we needed to improve on, and one of the first areas that they had was the computer area, because you remember the old Bazon location had the computers split up into 2 areas. They had a bunch of computers in the back corner and a bunch of computers in the front corner. Do we have some? And so you can see on the before and after sides, the left-hand side, we had one little bank of computers in the front of the building. We had a little hole in the back where we had a bunch of other computers. Now we took all those computers and consolidated them into one area. And as you can see on the right-hand photo, there's a service desk in the back. So if patrons need any help, there's help readily available from staff. So when we moved the computers, that opened up that back corner of the building. So we decided to take the Learn Center, which had been in the front corner, by the service desk, and we moved that to the back corner. It gives them a lot more space. We were able to move out their tables a little bit more, give them a little bit more room, and a little bit more privacy for when they have their conversations, because they're now in the back of the building. When we moved the Learn Center, that opened up that front corner of the building to turn into the new children's area. The old children's area was kind of off on the left-hand photo there. It was sort of just off to the side, not really pronounced real good, but now it's got its own little corner. We're actually working on a graphic to put on that back blue wall there. The next photo shows some carpeting that we interspersed around to make the area playful, and Alma and staff are really pleased, and the patrons over there, the children, are having a good time getting to know that place very, very well. We also replaced the OPAC station. We had this big, on the left-hand side, you can see a rather large wooden cabinetry there. We pulled that off and put a nice, sleek little modern compartment there to hold the OPAC station. And you can see the new carpet in all of these photos as well. The Kiva space, they have that little space down behind the children's area there where you could kind of step down and do some reading. It used to be a very dark area, as you can see in the photo on the left, and we repainted the walls. We put some lighter carpet down there, put some new tables and chairs in there, and so it lightened that place up, and it's going to be a lot more user-friendly. We also have power to those tables now, so people can sit down there and charge their devices. In the staff area, we changed the desk. We put new carpet in. As you can see, we gave them a little accent wall. It really makes it a lot more pleasant to work in. It's a much more pleasing space for staff to be in, so they're having a good time back there. We also made some improvements to the staff work area as well. So the main part of the building, as you can see, we repainted throughout the entire building. We changed the colors of some of the columns. They used to be all yellow. We've got some orange columns on one end of the building in the children's area. We've got some blue columns on the other end down by the Learn Center. So and the yellow are still in the center because that's where the teen area is at, and that was based on those yellow columns. So we wanted to keep those in place. Our communications team, Scott and his team, did a great job in the design of this space with the colors, and that was, so we had a great response from a full team effort. So in the restrooms, we made a significant change in the restroom because what we did was we painted the walls. So the old restrooms used to be pretty dark. As you can see, they had one sink on the left there in a long 6-foot counter. Well, what we did was we talked to our contractor, said, let's put 2 sinks in here, and we're making one of them, we're going to put a step underneath one of them so little kids can come up and they don't have to have a parent hold them up to use the sink, and the other sink will be still available for handicap use. We're also putting some hand towel dryers in there, some new mirrors, and we're going to spruce someplace up. We also included LED lighting in the bathrooms, which makes them a whole lot brighter now. As you can see, the drinking fountain, we upgraded to a bottle fill station, so staff really likes that, and I know the patrons are liking that too because they're filling up their bottles consistently. And that's a standard that we're trying to put in all of our locations whenever we do these renovations. Outside the building, we had to make some serious adjustments because, as you can see on the left, the concrete by the bike rack, it has sloped probably about 4 inches from where it originally had been, and we replaced that concrete back in 2014, I think. So it had sunk pretty considerably. So we ripped all that out. We discovered that there was some drainage. The drainage pipes underneath had clogged, and so basically all the water that was coming from the roof was just collecting under there and pulling everything out. So what we did was as you can see in that little inset photo there, we basically cut off the downspouts so they don't go down underground anymore, and so we don't have to worry about all that water getting bound up down there. It's just going to surface drain off into the landscape, so it'll be a lot less troublesome, and we'll have a lot less trouble over the years. Here we had a spot. These 2 pictures are from the same spot in the driveway. The original layout on the left had 3 drainage pipes coming out into the asphalt. Over the years, asphalt has been added onto there, so there was literally a little hole that these drained into. What we had the contractor do was they actually took the original drawings from the original construction back in the 90s, and they took out all the asphalt, they regraded to the original grade of the building and put everything back the way it was supposed to be in the driveway. So now we can just have the drainage come off the sidewalks and off the landscape, and we don't have to worry about all the little drain holes that could get clogged up over time. So it's going to be a big improvement over the years to keep that area flowing a little bit better drainage-wise. And then these are just a couple quick pictures of the parking lot. You can see we had some low spots in the parking lot. We've changed all that out. We've got all new striping in there and stuff done on all these on all this remediation. So this project, again, we do have our interim service being conducted out of the Granados Adult Senior Center, and we're looking to reopen in early fall of 2022. And again, this is basically what the meeting room looks like when the entire collection is stuffed in the meeting room. This did allow us to not have to rent a storage unit to keep all of the collection properly ventilated. It does, so the meeting room has its own air conditioning system, so it can keep everything at the proper levels of temperature and humidity. So, next one, I believe, is Forest Hills. Yes, this is another exciting one. We're getting good on this one because the project is moving along. The interim services out of the Gilbert Garza Community Center still. Staff has been great on working with patrons and staff, and they've been working with us in the building as far as design goes. We've got a few photos of what it's looking like. That project. We've got the millwork that's being put in place for all the service desk. That's going in. The new carpet, as you can see, is all in. The painting has all been completed. The lighting is all done. Next one, please. We've got this is the meeting room, so we've got the full opening door there for that particular meeting room. Those panels all can completely swing out of the way, so that opens up completely to the rest of the building. So that's going to be a very wonderful space when it's on the right-hand side. You can see the technicians installing the new AV systems. So that's going to be a great addition for that. And then here's a photo of the children's area with the painting on the wall and the carpet. Obviously, we don't have any shelving or furniture yet, but those are next on the list. And then the staff area, we've got some new flooring back there. They've changed some of the walls in the staff area. On the photo on the right, you can see we had the contractor basically put a hole in that wall, so it opens up the kitchen area to the staff area, so staff can have a lot more friendly conversations back there when they're on break and whatnot. So it's going to be an exciting project, and we'll be reopening that one late fall, early winter. We'll be getting on that project.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
could I because you have so much rich content, could we pause after that branch and just see if anyone has any questions?
Oh, sure.
I just worry that some of the questions might get lost as we get through all the branches. I apologize for interrupting.
Sure.
you. And I think Fernanda has joined as well. I wanted to see if she had any questions. Oh, okay. Is that, Edward, is that something you could help her with? Fernanda, can you hear us? Oh, great. You should be able, I think you are being unmuted. So if you'd like to ask a question.
I don't have a question yet, but I do have one for another branch, but thank you. I'm clicking it and it says you are not authorized to unmute yourself. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay, sounds good. So we've got you connected now. And of course, anyone else have any questions for Mark on, let's see if I get the order right.
Bazon, Forest Hills,
or
and
Westfall
Yeah.
branch.
One question.
Sure.
I know that you said that all of the water fountains are gonna be starting to be replaced with that auto-filling station.
Mhm.
Who changes the filter, and then does the library incur the cost for changing the filters and those things?
Yes, our maintenance staff handles the filter changes on those, yes. Mhm.
I was just curious, because I asked that question in my school district and nobody could give me an answer, so thank you. I appreciate that.
But, and I will double back with our facilities manager to make sure that they are doing that, because these are a new addition to the, I think McCreeless actually was the first one that got one a couple of years ago, so we'll double check on that. Good. Yes, they've all got the little counter that tell you how many bottles they filled and how much, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, staff will be keeping a close eye on that, yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Mhm. Yeah. And I'll try to slow up a little bit. So.
Yes, let's go on to Memorial Branch.
Okay, so the Memorial Branch Library, that one's moving along. Also, as Ramiro had mentioned, they did move the interim service to the Archives building on the St. Mary's campus. We are looking for a late summer, early fall reopening of that, and as we get closer to that date, we will keep you all informed on it. The Central Library Bond Project, that's moving along as well. We have construction moving along on the first and third floors. We are going to begin the alternate construction projects in July and August. We're getting some funding squared away on those projects, and then the complete construction should be done on the first floor in fall of 2022. Central weather repairs are basically complete. This will be the last month we report on that. The only punch item left is the contractors replacing some carpet in the basement and the staff area. But all of the painting has been completed, all of the everything's been done, so that project has been a success for us. So. And the main Soledad Phase 2 project, that obviously, as you all know, is continuing. We are having pretty regular communications with Public Works on that project to keep patrons and staff, to keep them as easy access into the building as possible. So we'll be continuing to work with those closely for all of our upcoming events and other events in the area. And the Texana project, that project is getting ready to get started. We're going to be going to council tomorrow, I believe, it's June 23rd. Yes, that's tomorrow for the construction contract. And then we'll be starting to schedule that for later this, construction will start later this summer. And then we'll get a more tight schedule from the contractor on that and let you know how we're working on that. We will also be able to add additional work from the Texana bond project because of the 2022 bond. We are working with Public Works to be able to carry through the funding for both bond projects so we can complete all the work at the same time and not have to close more than once. So. And there's also construction reports in your packet, so if you have any other questions, I'd be more than happy to answer it.
I have a
Yes.
question.
Sure.
I know we've been told this, just please help me remind me. When is the project supposed to be completed out on the street
For,
in front of the library, the Soledad?
that actually is scheduled, I believe, for summer of next year.
Like this for?
It's like a 16 to 18 month project. Yes, it's a very long, and unfortunately, most of it is, we've been told that Soledad is going to be like this for probably the next 6 to 8 months, if not longer, because it's just, there's that much work that's involved. So, yeah. I'm just waiting for them to bring the palm trees in, that's all.
I hear you, Marcy. It's a disappointment because it's so visible, and it just seems like the whole street's shut down.
Even trying to come, because it looks like it's closed.
I know, it does, and, yeah.
And Kathy, maybe we
It's
need to see
unfortunate.
if Public Works wants to come back in a couple of months and give us another update on things, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mark? Memorial, quite a few central projects he talked about as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I have a comment, though this is not necessarily for Mark. If we're worried about people finding the library, because when you come down San Pedro and go around the roundabout, it does say closed, period. And maybe we need to have a sign there that says, go this way to get to the library, and show people how to go down and make that U-turn on Savings, which I'd never heard of before, that little street, and then come back. Because maybe they just need to know that.
That's a great suggestion. There is like a blue and white sign that says Central Library for the entrance, kind of indicating that the parking garage entrance is open. So maybe something similar to that would be,
Well,
and we're not trying to solution, of course, but maybe if there's some way
No,
to
but
indicate.
No, I agree that construction is a disruption, but we have been working very closely with Public Works, and some of those signs that you see directing people to the Central Library has been because of our advocacy efforts. Obviously, it's not always enough, and every day it changes, literally every day. Either one street which was open the previous day, is closed, and so it's been quite a challenge, but we are working very closely with Public Works. Our communications team, led by Jessica, have been very involved. We will continue to work with them. I agree with you. And it's a serious concern for us, and we wish the project be completed and be over, but it's not. Yeah. So we will continue to engage Public Works to facilitate.
Yeah, I think having updated signing from the perspective of visitors is important. I think we all get into our habits of how we get to Central. And so like I personally will come down past the staff parking garage entrance and then loop around the front. And that whole, last time I came, I was able to go through the parking lot and then get onto the street. And today the parking lot's gutted and trenched also. So I think maybe just having an eye to some of the events that are occurring here and making sure the signage is moved would be fantastic to know someone's thinking about that.
If I come down Main or San Pedro, and I do go around the roundabout, I've also discovered that you can go through that little entrance.
1 second, Fernanda. Thank you, Linda. Yes, Fernanda, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I have a question in regards to the Denver branch library parking lot improvement. It said that the construction pricing came in over budget and that the scope is being reevaluated. I'm not sure if this was discussed at the previous meeting, but I was just curious to know what was that scope and it came in over budget.
And I'm sorry, Fernanda, you broke up a little bit when you were naming the branch. Which branch was it?
Geta branch?
Oh, Geta. Is that something that you have information about, Kathy or Mark?
So I had a little trouble hearing the question. Was it about the scope of the upcoming GARA project?
Yes, and I believe it was specifically about the parking lot
Yes.
estimate.
Yeah, so GARA project, and Mark can share details if we need them, is two big pieces of scope, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, and that branch has really been struggling, quite frankly, and we've been bringing in some more cooling units, especially for the staff area, which answered your question about why it's our rental of machinery over budget, and then the parking lot as well. So it will be those two big pieces of scope.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, do you have any other follow-up questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have a report from the naming committee. Linda?
We're busy this month. The naming committee met on June the 7th as our regular committee meeting, and then we met again this last Saturday, June 18th, at McCreeless Library in their meeting room to discuss the possibility of naming their meeting room after Liz Traynor. And we had public input for that, and there will be an action thing later on this meeting. And we've also gotten a letter suggesting a naming for the meeting room at Thousand Oaks, and we'll be discussing that in the future.
About the agenda item when we get to that later on the agenda. Next is a report from the Public Relations Committee, and seeing that Jean's not here, I understand the committee did not meet this reporting period. Next on the agenda is a report from the Ad Hoc Bond Policy Committee, also led by Jean, and that committee also did not meet this reporting period. So we will move to the Friends of the San Antonio Public Library. Thank you, John.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Friends have been very busy, and I must say we were thrilled with the book festival returning this year and what it meant to us as we were able to have a presence there, and we garnered over 30 new members, which was fantastic for us. And then on top of that, as part of our campaign that day, we were promoting the bookseller and offering people a free book at the bookseller. The staff at the bookseller and volunteers, they were overwhelmed by the response they got, and we had one of the best days we've had since we reopened last fall. So that's encouraging to see that we have a lot of people looking for the bookseller and wanting to go down there and spending their money, because that is how we will be able to help the library even more. So that's thrilling to know. Also, with not only just the bookseller, but several of our branches have been able to resume their own book sales, and they've been very successful. I know Landa and Brookhollow have had one, and Potranco, so things are, and Tobin had one 2 weeks ago. So that's great to see they are all back in the swing of things and raising money to help themselves and the library. So that's where we are with the Friends. Any questions? Great. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Oh, we're on? Okay. Most of you probably have already received your cards in the mail, the Save the Date cards for Katrina Ball and the Literary Luncheon. We combined those since that event, the Literary Luncheon event, got pushed into Q4 for us. We are doing all the save the dates and everything combined. The Katrina Ball landing page is up and running, so we've already sold a couple of tables on the website. The e-blast went out today, and we are just waiting to confirm our honorary chairs. We have a really wonderful high-profile couple in mind, and we have a lunch with them next Monday, so we should be able to confirm the last of our team. So I've mentioned before, Katrina is Erica Prosper Nuremberg, Katrine is Rick Cavender. Our executive chairs are Nick and Lacey Hollis and Chris and Gwen Graham. And just one little last detail with our honorary chairs, and we will be ready to go full tilt on Katrina Ball. So sponsor packets will be out shortly, and we do hope that later on y'all approve the closure of Central Library for us at 2 o'clock for that event. And the literary luncheon I did mention once before, but again want to mention Chris Bojalian, who is a best-selling author and also really a library activist, is going to be our speaker for the literary luncheon. I do have a couple of his books with me. If anybody wants to take one and read it, you can have them. They sent us a few, so I do have a couple with me if you want to get those from me after the meeting. Our board did just confirm 6 new members for a mid-year class this year. Typically, we only add people at the beginning of the year, but we wanted to add a few more this year, so we added 6 new members. We are still targeting membership on our board from all of the city council districts, and we are still missing 3, 5, and 6. So Selena Montoya, who's chair of our advocacy committee, she is meeting with all of the city council people through her duties as our advocacy chair, and asking them for nominations for our board as well. So if you have any suggestions about that, please just shoot me an email before September 1st, and that will get them into our next class, which will then start on our board January 1st, 2023. Our programs are going strong throughout the summer. We have a new partner, a pediatric cardiology group that is doing our Born to Read program, and they are absolutely thrilled. One of them has volunteered to be on our board because they're just so thrilled with the ability to give the parents early literacy information, talk about the library, talk about the importance of reading to your children, and get that Born to Read book from the foundation instead of just all the medical stuff that, I mean, if you've ever had to see a pediatric cardiologist, it's never good news, really. And then our literacy caravan is doing a few visits this summer. It is awfully hot, as you all know, so we are limited to about 8 visits this summer. We are going to schools, and we are seeing some of those kiddos in summer school, because really we feel like those are the kids that need to get excited about reading, and so we're visiting a few of the Compass Rose campuses and a few other school campuses for the summer, but we will be back at it in the fall, hopefully full tilt with without all of the COVID precautions and the COVID restrictions that we've had over the course of the last 2 years. Does anyone have any questions? All right, and everybody's marked their calendar for Katrina Ball, right? Okay, that's all I have.
I didn't pay close enough attention to the Soledad project. When does it, was it 6 to 8 months? Is that what Mark reported in terms of?
The street project?
Yes, the street project.
Kathy?
16 months, okay. Yeah. Are we concerned about impact to Katarina Ball and how we're going to, I know it's not the board's problem to solve, but I'll state that.
Well, we are concerned, and go ahead, Kathy.
We are concerned, yes. But what we do is we have almost daily contact with Public Works, but we also have technical meetings once every 2 weeks. So we'll go ahead and get Katrina Ball and any other events at Central that are high profile on their radar. And then what Mark was sharing is the whole project is about 16 to 18 months. The worst of it for our part of Soledad is probably about 6 to 8 months. But nonetheless, anything that falls within that window where there's going to be any impact to basically getting into the garage primarily, we will work closely with them. So I think it's an excellent idea, even though we're a little ways out, we can get Katrina Ball on their radar and just watch it very carefully. We did have, not to pile on, but we did have an incident this past weekend where people couldn't get into the garage or exit the garage properly. You know, there wasn't proper measures. And so the Assistant Director of Public Works was very responsive at the time, but now we're working with them to avoid that happening at all, right? So great, they were responsive, but we really need to keep on it to make sure that doesn't happen, where people can't get in and out. Thank you.
I may add that we have experience with the book festival. As you know, we invited a lot of folks to come down to Central Library as well as Southwest School of Art. So we have some experience in working with Public Works, and Public Works working with a contractor to help folks navigate and get here and have access to the Central Library. We will do the same with Katrina Ball. So we're worried and concerned, but we have experience. Book Festival turned out to be very successful. Lots of folks showed up, and we expect that we will be able to mitigate any barriers and obstacles for attendees to the Katrina Ball. Kathy, now, how many more months in terms of immediately will be impacted?
Well, the worst of it for us is about 6 to 8 months. Yeah, it's a long
Additional
time.
6 to 8 months, okay.
From now, yes.
Yikes.
So it's something we'll have to, like you're saying, we're gonna have to keep on it, because it's the reality, but like you said, Book Festival, we worked with them very closely. Jessica's team did an amazing job with them, and we'll do the same for Katrina Ball, because we know that there's often a lot of drop-off area and that type of thing, so we need to be really cognizant of that.
Thanks.
I have a comment or question. With the Katrina Ball, I did see that they had valet parking for 300. Is that right? And I think that, I had read it somewhere that they had valet parking. Anyway, I was just going to say that if you are going to offer it, I think I read it somewhere, that have it reasonable. Have it real reasonable and really advertise that. Because we have a problem out here that people see it and they think, oh, we don't want to get involved with that, not knowing the situation. But if they think, oh, there's valet parking for something nominal, maybe that would help them come. I would advertise it too, not just say valet parking, but how much it costs, as long as it's reasonable. With people paying gas now and everything else, they're using every excuse in the world not to go someplace. So.
I went to an event in the spring, this was in California, but they had a ride-sharing discount code for their event that they gave out with their pass. So if somebody was like kind of on the fence about whether, I think in California a lot of people don't have cars, but if they're on the fence about whether to attend, they had like a little over half of their ride was like subsidized. So I think that was a sponsorship with a ride-sharing company, but it was definitely a good experience, so I share in that vein. We'll move on next to the staff report, and we have a mid-year report on the library's performance metrics. Kathy, are you going to introduce Randall?
Yes, so it's my great pleasure to introduce Randall Polasic to you. You know him. He's going to present the mid-year performance report to you. And I just really want to congratulate Randall for his leadership for the library organization. Of course, using data to make decisions so that we can improve the customer experience and get more use of the library is something we're very focused on. He's done a lot of great work in this area to help the whole organization. And so tonight he's going to present to you kind of where we are with our performance this year and where we're headed for next year. So with that, Randall.
Thank you, Kathy. So just to go over, I have 2 goals. One is to share lots of information regarding library data, and then more importantly, making sure that everyone has some key takeaways of where we're at regarding mid-year performance for fiscal year 22. Just a quick check-in for those participating virtually. If you can hear me and see the slides, type in chat and Edward can confirm with us. And also just want to start off with the mission of, that is, the San Antonio Public Library is committed to the continual evaluation of library performance through analysis and data review. So that is our focus for tonight's report. So when we talk about mid-year performance, this report we're going to be focusing primarily on 8 months of actual data. So fiscal year 22 started October 21, and we're again going to be focusing 8 months till May. And we'll also do some comparison with previous fiscal years, and then also where we project to end these last 4 months of fiscal year 22, and a little bit about what we expect for next fiscal year for 23. So just starting off as a reminder about our library key performance indicators, we'll call these KPIs. We have 3 main ones, and the first one, library circulation. Just that is the use of library materials both being checked out and renewed. Hours of technology is a combination of 2 things. It is Wi-Fi hours being used and computer hours added together, and that's how we're tracking technology being used. And the third is library visits. This is users visiting the library in person. So these are 3 main KPIs that a lot of library industries do look at continuously, and we'll focus on these this evening. So let's talk a little bit about performance against goal setting. So during the pandemic, obviously goals were adjusted due to some behavior changes for fiscal year 21 and 22. And we talk about performance being evaluated against the goals is we're basically lining up what the goal was for each month and then what the actual performance was, and then putting those side by side to see how well we reach those goals. And then for fiscal year 23, we do expect to see a little bit of those goals being adjusted because of the pandemic. So starting off with a summary, just for where we're at mid-year. Across the board, we're above our goals, 16% above for circulation, 45% above the goal for technology use, and then 1% above the goal for library visits. So the first KPI that we'll be looking at is for technology use, being 45% above the goal. From the fiscal year to date, October through May, we had a goal to reach 750,000 hours, and we actually recorded just over 1 million. So that's increased use of Wi-Fi both inside the library and around parking lots. Throughout the pandemic, there was a increased need for Wi-Fi and access to technology, and the libraries responded and continue to provide that access to the internet. Because we are looking at data, we can tell that there are users bringing their own device in to the library or through parking lots. So again, Wi-Fi is constantly being used. This is just a visual. Hopefully you do have a printout of it if it's hard to see on the screen, but I'll walk you through it. Starting from the left, this is fiscal year 20. You can see that was in the middle of that year is when the pandemic started. Each of those columns is going to represent a month, and then that orange line is going to be what the target was for that month. So anytime that you're seeing blue above the orange line, that is exceeding the goal. And then for 2020, when the pandemic started, you could see that, you know, there was reduced technology. And if you notice that orange line for 21 in the middle and for 22 being lowered, that is what we're referring to is adjusting goals. But you could see we're still exceeding the use of technology throughout. And we're expecting that to remain throughout 22. And for fiscal year 23, we are estimating to recover continued technology hours. So switching to our second KPI for circulation, which we are 16% above, the goal was just over 4 million, and we were actually recorded and recognized almost 4.8 million items circulated to date. We can explain this because before the pandemic, we did see that digital items were about 25% of total circulation, and we're now looking at 40%. So there's been a big shift in behavior change. Digital items were popular, continued to remain popular. A lot of users used digital items for the first time in 2020, and they enjoyed it, and they continue to use. Another reason is due to auto-renew, and that's a service that continues to be used as a courtesy. Auto renewal is something that we actually implemented in 2018 as far as a way to decrease barriers to access. And basically, if you use a service, if you have an item that you have checked out and there's nobody else that waiting for the item, our system will renew it, allowing the user to use the item for longer. And it's something that we do get quite a bit of comments that it is a relatively convenient service. So that's also explaining the circulation. And similar visual where you'll see the 3 fiscal years and each column representing a month. The difference here is that darker blue is going to be the proportion of digital. Of course, I pointed this out in previous presentations. In March and May of 2020, that was almost 100% digital at that time. And you could see how the change in behavior shifted. So we are seeing a more proportion of digital items being used. And then our last KPI that we're talking about tonight for library visits, where we are 1% above the goal. We've been noticing that every time that we launched or embarked on a new phase of reopening, that resulted in more users coming back to the library. Physical visits generally are still lower now. We do know that even though there are less visitors to the actual libraries, we're continuing to engage with the community through virtual programming and virtual events. So even though there's not counted as a traditional library visit, we do know that we are engaging with the community still in different ways. This is something that library systems are always talking about, and how can we respond to that behavior change and how library visits. We are expected to reach our goal this fiscal year, and that's mostly because of the most recent return of more in-person children's programs. Next slide. So this is our last graph that we look at, similar with the 3 years. I would like to draw attention to this fiscal year for 22. Once we can see that we've been reaching that orange target line, that means we are meeting our goal, and we are expected to continue to do that for the rest of this year. So this is just a summary. If you add up those 3 KPIs, you'll notice we had a total target of just about 5.5 million total. That's items checked out, library visits, and technology hours. And then if you notice the blue one, that's a little higher. That's the actual performance. And we were closer to almost 6.5 million. That's just adding together. So here are the key takeaways. Again, hours of technology, 45% above goal, circulation 16% above goal, and visits are 1% above. So looking forward for how we expect performance to be in fiscal year 23, setting targets and goals is a part of budget development, so that's what we're working on right now, estimating where we expect to be for next fiscal year. This mid-year performance, it does influence next year, so we're looking at introducing children's services and the growth that we've seen that is being factored in for next fiscal year. And then we do make adjustments. If there's any planned projects that we know that will happen in fiscal year 23, we do go to those locations, adjust those goals. Because obviously if we're closed for any time, we can't offer those full services. So we want to make sure that we're being strategic that way. For circulation, we are expected to fully restore 100% in fiscal year 23 as it was before the pandemic. So the last normal full year was fiscal year 2019. We had just over 8 million items circulated, so we are expecting to fully restore that in fiscal year 23. For technology use, we're almost at 85% of fully restoring what it was in 2019. And then for visits, we're looking to maintain and remain at 50% of what it was in 2019. So that's what the targets will be. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Yes, I do have a question concerning the circulation of the digital materials. Does your data include usage under the SORA app that has been made available to the schools?
Yes, anything that's under SORA or digital collection, which we can even break it down by format, audiobooks or ebooks, yes, it includes all of those materials.
Excellent, because I feel like the librarians are doing a wonderful job of making that known to our students and getting that accessible to them.
Yes. Sure.
General question. The targets that you showed, this one's fine. You showed this similar graph for circulation and for visits and for technology use. Are there ever mid-year adjustments in the targets? Because it seems that there is, on a few of them, a consistent, like, large percentage beating of the target, you know? So I'm just curious about that. Is that only done on an annual basis?
With the current process with the budget office, there are not technically mid-year adjustments specifically for performance metrics, so the targets that we set, they do remain in place for the entire fiscal year. And that is a challenge sometimes because, you know, things do change, and especially throughout 21 and 22, right?
Sure.
So it's just a one-time submission.
Okay. And then another question, can you help me understand circulation? Is this number that we see, or maybe this one's a little bit harder to read, if I reference like a certain branch had a circulation of 100,000 items, is that physical items that were checked out, and how does auto renew service play into circulation numbers? Or is it a percentage of the total circulation that's?
Okay, let's go back to that slide, Edward, with the charts for circulation, I'm sorry, the columns. So right here, basically, all physical locations are going to represent the lighter blue.
Mm-hmm.
And then anytime that there's a digital item, it's the darker blue. And then activities like auto renewal, that's going to actually report as system on that page, where it has system as a row, and that's considered a system renewal because it wasn't like an actual checkout at the actual location. So it's still a physical checkout or renewal, but because it was a system renewing it, it shows in
I
your
don't
system.
see the reference to system, but so, just so I understand, if I check out a book, it adds as a 1 to the library that if I checked it out at Bazon, it would be like a 1, right?
Yes.
And then when it auto renews, is that stay as a 1, or is that like a second?
It's a second. Renewal is another circulation
Like
of the item.
another
Yes.
transaction? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right.
Next on the agenda, we have a staff report presentation on the library's initiatives to address the well-being of employees. Ramiro, will you tee us up?
Yes, thank you. And I'll invite Dr. Haley Holmes to the podium, but before she starts her presentation, I just wanted to give you some context. Library administration recognizes the impact the pandemic has had on our employees, the challenges that we've had to face collectively and individually as we navigated the pandemic, recognizing the disruption, and also based on we've been doing some literature searches and reading research regarding the impact on the well-being of employees. We have taken various initiatives to address employee well-being. One of them is I had asked Haley Holmes to lead a work group of library employees from all levels of the organization to look at the situation of employee well-being and make recommendations to library administration. And that work has been completed, and Haley will report on that work group that she led. Haley?
Thank you. Thank you also for the opportunity to speak to you about something that I'm very passionate about, and that's our staff. Like Ramiro said, the last 2 years have been challenging for everyone. We've all been affected by the pandemic in some way or another. And I think working with the public has evolved since 2020. And some of our staff are feeling burned out and overwhelmed, as we all are. In addition, people turn to libraries during times of inflation. So as the library use is trending upwards, it's even more evident that we need to take care of our employees so that they can continue to give quality service to our users. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing and some of the outcomes of the group that I've been leading. Our organizational health unit has been working to support staff through several initiatives. We recently rolled out access to the Headspace app. I don't know if you all are familiar with this, but it's an app that focuses on mindfulness and meditation to reduce stress. And so far, we've had 125 of our employees sign up for it. And I wanted to note that it's available for all library employees, part-time and full-time. And as much as possible, we try to treat our full-time employees and our part-time employees with the same significance. The library department has the most part-time employees of any department in the city. And because of some of our advocacy efforts, part-timers now receive paid leave, and the library recognizes their years of service, even though the city doesn't. So we're always trying to advocate for our part-time employees. A citywide survey is going to be going out to all part-time employees throughout the city due to the advocacy that the library has regarding our part-time employees. We also have a wellness liaison program that's being reactivated throughout the system. At each location, there's a staff member who is designated as the wellness liaison for their unit or their branch, and their job is to plan activities and communicate wellness activities to their location. And one of the things that we're wanting to do is to look at ways that we can support those individuals more fully, including providing them some funds so that they have money to do some of those activities. As you know, we're also planning an all-staff day in October, so we're looking forward to that impact that's going to have on staff to be able to come together, which we haven't been able to do since 2018. And we're focusing on well-being for the day, recognition of our staff, and just having fun. So we want this to be a stress-free day where we're just together and really recognizing what we've all been through over the last couple of years. The organizational health unit is also leading a few different task forces that have staff members from throughout the organization on them, and their topics that they're focusing on are communication. We're always looking and working on communication, a department of 560 employees spread out over 30 locations. That's always something we need to work on. So they're looking at the staff newsletter and improvements they can make there. We have a library administrative directive that's about communication, so they're reevaluating that. And also looking at the staff Q&A, which is an anonymous forum that we have through our staff web for comments. They have another group that's looking at training, including orientation and ongoing training for staff. And their third group is about staff recognition, so looking at how we recognize and let our employees know that they're valued, and what are some ways that we could do better to fill all of our vacancies. And at this time, we only have about 33 vacancies, which is really, really good. And we've promoted lots and lots of employees over the last year, which is exciting. So Ramiro mentioned that he asked me to put together a group to evaluate the various struggles that our staff are facing. And I put a call out to the organization and had 30 employees who wanted to participate. And I felt that with this initiative, everyone who wanted to be part of that group should be, that it was important to hear from all of those people. And it's a very diverse, inclusive group, and includes staff from, I think, every job title that we have. So there are people that are in facilities, someone from the director's office, administration, from all of the various levels at our branches, and from support services, public services. So we have a really good group of people. And over the last 2.5 months, we've met weekly, where I've led discussions and brainstorming activities to identify issues that they want to address and solutions for those issues. We even came up with a mission statement. I always like to have something to guide us. And our mission statement is: the employee well-being work group will propose actionable, sustainable, and measurable short and long-term initiatives to create an environment that supports physical, mental, and emotional health for all SAPL employees and helps establish SAPL as a desirable workplace. So one of the great things that came, I know we were starting to use Microsoft Teams before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, we really started to use that as a tool of communication. And for my work group, it's been especially good because I do have part-time employees, full-time employees, and they can't always make it to the meetings. And I have some people who only work weekends. So they've been able to engage through Teams in all of our discussions and our brainstorming activities. And I've asked them to do a variety of things, including to look at issues from different perspectives, so not just from their own, but how would they like to see their manager address an issue or administration? Or what is it that they could do in their own space to address an issue? And we were able to narrow down our topics, and you will see that there are a couple that you've heard before: communication, staff training and development, work-life balance, and emotional wellness. So those are the topics that we decided to focus on. And we developed 4 subgroups, and everyone decided which group they wanted to be on. And they came up with actionable, well-thought-out proposals, including research and justification for their ideas. So I'm extremely proud of what they came up with. And I have the recommendations. They're multiple pages long, but I didn't think you want to hear all of that today. So a few of the examples of the ideas that they came up with, one from each group. Create an employee communication work group to continuously assess the needs of the organization. So communication is something that we always need to work on, so here's a way that we can do this going forward. Another one is to require a certain number of hours of continuing education for managers. So at this point, we don't have a requirement as such. Consider shifting operational hours to allow more flexible scheduling and to meet the needs of the public more closely. So we also looked at things from the perspective of the public, not just from ourselves and what we need, but what they need as well. Provide dedicated funds to wellness liaisons to use for team building or personal wellness activities. So those are just a few examples of the ideas that they came up with. And in conclusion, I wanted to express my appreciation for the members of this work group, the time and the effort and the thought that they put into the proposals that they came up with, and that they were able to have honest discussions, and sometimes that included respectful disagreements. So it was interesting to see these issues addressed from all the different perspectives throughout our organization. And I also just wanted to thank Ramiro for hearing the feedback and for putting a priority on staff. Because in my opinion, our employees are our most important asset, and it's critical that we listen and respond to their needs. So I'm really looking forward to the next steps in this process to put their ideas into practice. I'm happy to take any questions.
Did you have a comment you wanted to make, Ramiro?
I did. I was going to wait until questions, but I'll make it now. I just want to emphasize that employee well-being is a priority of mine, as well as the administrative team, and it will continue to be. I want to express my appreciation to Haley for leading this work group. As you know, she's the interim library services administrator right now, so she has lots on her plate, and she agreed to continue to work. Well, we finished this project, but she and other members of the team, as well as organizational health, which is a unit within the library that focuses on the health of the organization, will now be working, rolling up our sleeves to work on those recommendations that have been submitted so we can implement as many as we can. Some of them may be a little longer, but we were having some very serious conversations at the administrative level, again, because it's as Haley indicated, our employees are our major asset. Without our employees, we cannot provide the services that we provide. So again, it will continue to be a priority, and I just wanted to say that. Haley will respond, or I will respond to any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Thank you for that very informative presentation and for the work that you're doing. I always think it's just
fantastic the way our library system, under your direction, Ramiro, is always leading the charge in proactively addressing issues or areas that could become issues, I should say. So I think that's great. I will first ask if any trustees have any questions for Haley or Ramiro.
I do. I'm just curious that, you mentioned what their grievances were, but the one thing you didn't mention was pay. And everything's gone up so much, and like the price of gas and just trying to get to work, and so is that going to be addressed in some way? Have their pay increased because everything's gone up? The price of food, everything? So is that a hard, I don't know what is involved with doing that, but I think we ought to really be thinking about it. They can be the best employees in the world, but they still have to eat.
I can respond to that, and if Haley has something to add. First of all, the city manager is, along with the HR department, Human Resources Department, are looking very seriously in the last few months and continue to work on compensation. There has been some movement. Some employees have received some increases, not all of our employees. Human Resources have prioritized the different classifications, so there's movement in that direction. And we will continue to advocate on behalf of library employees. The other piece to my response is that while compensation is very important, some of the other things that Haley reported on communication, transparency in operations, life-work balance are also just as important as compensation. Studies have shown that. It doesn't mean compensation is not important, but there are other aspects of the work experience that employees value and that drive employees feeling good about their employer. So I wanted to address it from those two perspectives. Haley, you're welcome to jump in and add to that.
It's definitely a topic that we discussed and is included in the recommendations, is to look at pay.
Thank you for doing this. That's fantastic. I'm so glad that the library is really taking employee well-being in consideration. So just a couple things. I appreciate that you guys are taking part-timers seriously and making sure that their well-being is met. But also, you had mentioned two questions. You had said that you had 30 people, I guess, come together and from different positions. Is that also representative of all the branches? Did you get most of the branches to participate?
More than half, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes. And then this is going to be an ongoing, is there
So I think that is to be determined. When I put out the call for this group, I told them that this would be a 3-month commitment. Okay. So we are going to be wrapping up this group, but I'm hoping that many of these people will want to be involved in the action plan when we get to that step.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
I am curious if, Ramiro, you feel that once the action plan is developed, if that would be something that could be shared with the board too, so we can stay connected?
Absolutely. We will provide reports to the board on our efforts. As Haley indicated, the initial work has been done. The baton has been passed on to library administration. We will be working immediately on next steps, as Haley reported, and we can report to the board as part of the director's report the progress we're making and any other initiatives that we may implement as part of our efforts. I do want to acknowledge David McCary has also been, Assistant City Manager, has been a champion. Once we shared with him that our part-time employees were actually, for the longest time, being viewed as not employees, full-time employees, and through our efforts, we have achieved various wins for our part-time employees. They will be included in the annual city service recognition, which they had not, and we're continuing to advocate. We advocated for additional benefits for part-time employees. The city's Human Resources Department will be issuing a survey for part-time employees to gauge additional and get additional feedback from our part-time employees. So there is progress being made in that regard because our part-time employees are as valuable as any other employee. And as Haley reported, 60% of all part-time employees in the city of San Antonio are in the library department. About 40%, close to 40% of our employee workforce are part-time employees. So again, we're making progress in that front as well.
That's great, that's fantastic. I recall having met a part-time employee for the city who had worked like 16 or 17 years and wasn't recognized, formally recognized for that. So I think that's fantastic. And I appreciate you and the staff, and Haley, you for the role that you played for bringing that passion to the inclusivity and making sure that you're elevating everyone's concerns. Because I think the library has a unique opportunity to, with the size of the staff that we have compared to some of the other departments, to really lead the way there. So I'm encouraged to hear that. It's always a fine balance, you know, between what the staff is responsible for, because you are the best of the best in what you're doing, and what the board is responsible for. So I hope that you'll continue to be open to us asking inquiries about some of the operational aspects of what you do, and then allow us the opportunity just to get to know more about the inner workings of the library so that we can preside over and provide advice in the areas that we should be providing advice around. So I thank you both for that. Next, we have a recommendation from the naming committee, as Linda mentioned in her report.
Okay, the naming committee has voted to recommend that the board add the name of Elizabeth, which is also called Liz, Cornelia Gainson Trainer to the official name of the meeting room at McCreeless Branch Library. And understand that the official name right now is the meeting room. So we're just adding her name to that. And we'll take it to a vote, I hope. Okay.
Just to recap from the earlier agenda item, this was the subject of the public meeting that was held at McCreeless Library last weekend. We did receive public input, and as Linda mentioned, the committee is recommending that this name be added. So we will entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
I'm sorry, I presented it as a recommendation from the committee. It doesn't need a motion.
It doesn't need to put before we vote on it, is that right, Jessica? I think we still need a motion, but we'll ask Jessica.
My understanding is that if it is a motion from, or a recommendation from a committee, it does not need a motion.
A roll call vote, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jessica. Will you lead us in the vote?
Yes.
All right.
Jean Brady is absent. Joanne Harris is absent. Josie Martinez?
Aye.
Andrea Sanchez Muniz?
Aye.
Jeremy Lundin?
Aye.
Fernanda Cardenas has departed the virtual meeting. Paul Stahl is absent. Marcy Ince?
Aye.
Judy Cruz?
Aye.
Linda Nairn?
Aye.
And Jaspreet Kaur?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you for that clarification, Linda. I apologize. I did not ask if there was any discussion required, but seeing that the motion passed, I am confident that the board is in alignment with the naming committee there. The next item is to consider and approve the temporary closure of the Cortez and Brookhalla branch. Kathy, you have additional information for us?
Yes, thank you very much. So this item, we have 2 branch projects that are ready to go forward. So we're super excited about that. Cortez and Brookhalla, we'll just present them one at a time. So first, to just refresh for Cortez branch, the scope of this project is to do heating, ventilation, and air conditioning work. It's a project of about $400,000. It's a deferred maintenance project, which just means we've got to finish by the end of the fiscal year, which we will. This went to council previously for the actual construction project. You'll see in a minute that we're not recommending closing until September, so there is some time to develop an interim service plan, which the public services team is at work on and looking at options, near the branch to provide that interim service. And then we will, of course, be launching a full communication plan, including keeping the facilities committee and the board up to date on the project, as well as notifying stakeholders. We take very seriously proposing a closure. Of the scope of the work, we do feel that a closure is necessary. So we can go on to the next slide. So we're looking at the equipment arriving in August or September. Given the scope of this particular project, we feel a 3 to 5 week closure would be adequate to complete the project. However, as we learned at Westfall, there can always be things discovered, so we will be proposing an action for the board where we say 3 to 5 week closure is estimated or until project completion. Then, of course, if we discover anything we don't know now, we will be sure to let facilities committee and the board know and incorporate that into the communication plan. So we're suggesting a branch closure start of September 6th. That's the day after Labor Day holiday. And then this would continue for approximately 3 to 5 weeks if all goes well, and then we would be able to reopen. Cortez is both a early voting site and an election day site. Early voting starts on October 24th. Date voting in the meeting room. We're hopeful that this can be complete by then, but if not, we will have a plan B to accommodate voting. And then this one is a slightly shorter closure period that's being suggested as opposed to Brookhollow. And when we talk about the Brookhollow project, I can share some of why that is. But the action that we're suggesting to the board and that the facilities committee endorsed at their last meeting is a temporary closure of Cortez Branch Library starting September 6th and lasting 3 to 5 weeks approximately, or until the project is completed.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the temporary closing of the Cortez Branch Library on or around September 6, 2022, for a period of approximately 5 weeks or until project is completed.
Jean Brady is absent. Joanne Harris is absent. Josie Martinez. Andrea Sanchez Muniz.
Aye.
Jeremy Lundin. Fernanda Cardenas is absent. Marcy Ince. Judy Cruz. Linda Nairn. Paul Stahl is absent. Jaspreet Kaur.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the part B of this item is regarding the Brookhollow Branch Library. This was also considered by Facilities Committee, and that's why we're bringing it forward to you tonight. This is a capital improvement project, which just means we don't quite have to hit the end of the fiscal year, although we're still aggressively pursuing this on the fastest timeline we can. This is to replace a number of parts of the air conditioning system and heating and ventilation system. Same situation, you'll see on the next slide in just a second that we're suggesting a start of a closure on September 6th. So that does give the team some time to make an interim service plan and also kick off the communication plan with all of the various stakeholders in the community. And so we'll go on to the next slide. So again, for this one, we're expecting the equipment to arrive in August timeframe. This one is a little bit longer anticipated closure of 6 to 8 weeks. And really what that's regarding is while Cortez has the 3 units that are going to be replaced located on the roof, so we can bring in a crane. I got all this information from Mark. I don't want y'all to think I really know this stuff. But we can bring in a crane and we can remove those relatively quickly, whereas the Brookhollow HVAC equipment is located inside the building in a mechanical area. So that's going to take longer to dismantle because it's inside the building. So that kind of explains the difference in the time frame pretty much. So for this one, we are proposing a branch closure date of September 6th, again, the day after Labor Day, for 6 to 8 weeks or until the project's completed. This one, of course, bumps up more closely to the early voting, but our contingency plan would still be the same, which is to accommodate voting in the meeting room and you know, making arrangements for that to be the way we do it. So the Facilities Committee, again, did endorse this, and we're bringing it forward for board action tonight.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. So we'll entertain a motion for the closure of Brookhollow.
I move that we approve the temporary closing of Brookhollow Branch Library on or around September 6th, 2022 for a period of approximately 8 weeks until the project is completed.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Josie. So we have a first and a second. Any questions or discussion on the closure plan for Brookhollow? Okay. Can you lead us in a vote, Jessica? Thank you.
Jean Brady is absent. Joanne Harris is absent. Josie Martinez.
Aye.
Andrea Sanchez Muniz.
Aye.
Jeremy Lundin.
Aye.
Fernanda Cardenas is absent. Paul Stahl is absent. Marcy Ince. Judy Cruz.
Aye.
Linda Nairn. And Jaspreet Kaur. The motion passes.
Have a request from the San Antonio Public Library Foundation to close the Central Library for the Caterina Ball. Go ahead, Ramiro.
Your last action item is item number 18. This is a request from the San Antonio Public Library Foundation to close the Central Library early at 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 22nd. Next slide. So as you know, we enjoy a strong partnership with the San Antonio Public Library Foundation. It's our fundraising arm. They have been instrumental in providing lots of resources to the San Antonio Public Library, supported many, many projects, capital projects, as well as other projects. So we enjoy a strong partnership with the San Antonio Public Library Foundation. The requested closure, we do not anticipate any, well, we think it will have minimal impact. Based on previous experiences, this is not the first time we have closed the Central Library to accommodate the Katrina Ball. As you know, the Library Foundation and the organizers need some time to stage the event, so this is a reasonable request. The library staff supports the request, and I may add, we will have a comprehensive communication plan to inform our public of the closure and to direct our public to other library facilities, such as the San Pedro Branch Library, which is up the street, as well as the Landa Library, and of course, take advantage of our digital library. Library staff supports this request.
Thank you, Ramiro. So we'll entertain a motion on this last agenda item, with an action item.
I will move that we close the library at 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 22nd, so that the foundation can come in and wave their magic wand for the Katrina Ball.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any questions or discussion on this? Yep.
I do have a
Yes.
question. Part-time staff, are they paid hourly, and will this impact them in any way, or can they make up those hours so that
They will
they're not
make up
short?
the hours or be assigned while we may be close to the public. Some staff will remain within the building, but we cannot provide public services with the organizers of the event coming in and setting up.
Ask Jessica to lead us in a vote.
Jean Brady is absent. Joanne Harris is absent. Josie Martinez.
Aye.
Andrea Sanchez Muniz.
Aye.
Jeremy Lundin.
Aye.
Fernanda Cardenas is absent. Paul Stahl is absent. Jaspreet Kaur.
Aye.
Marcy Ince. Judy Cruz.
Aye.
Lennon Aaron. The motion passes.
And the last item that we have is a review of parliamentary procedures. And Ramiro, are you going to introduce?
Yes, I'm
Steve?
happy to invite to the podium Steve Whitworth, our Assistant City Attorney. He's here to provide the refresher that was requested. And by the way, staff are excused for those that are ready to go home. Well, except Kathy and the immediate administrative staff. All right, Steve.
So maybe you've seen this before, so we won't take up too much time. We'll keep going. We're going to talk about the Ethics Code, Public Information Act, Open Meetings Act, and basic parliamentary procedure, which we just had a parliamentary question this meeting. So, City Ethics Code applies to city employees, officials, officers, council aides, anyone wanting to do business with the city. So, Library Board of Trustees members, yourselves, are both officials and officers. Very confusing terminology, but that's what the Ethics Code says. You can find, if you're ever interested, you can find it in the city code. Topics. Sorry, is that better? Topics for officials and officers. There's conflict of interest provisions, unfair advancement of private interests, gifts, confidential information, representation of private interests, public property and resources, and prohibited interests in contracts. Lots of different rules. Former city officials and officers, so once you leave the board, you also have continuing confidentiality requirements imposed on you. Subsequent representation of private interests might be a problem, so you can't just show back up and represent private interests in front of the board. And for a while, you'll be prohibited from having an interest in a discretionary contract.
And Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you just, what is going to be the format of the session? You just read through like about 8 or so items. Are you going to be going deeper into each of those, or?
This is sort of a shortened version of the presentation. We can go over, I can answer questions as best I can. I should have started off with, I'm not the expert in this. I'm presenting for Kamala Kuhnau, who I work with very closely. Anytime an ethics question comes up, I consult with her because it is so important, and I want to make sure that everyone gets the right answer. So if you have any questions about what the type of things are that I'm talking about, we were delayed 2 months, so I put this together 2 months ago, so I'm not 100% sure what's going to come up on the next slide. So.
Okay, so on the previous slide, though, essentially you're saying that if anyone has questions about these items, or is there a place that they can find out more?
Right. If you go back one more slide, Section 2-41, the city code, you can find it on Muni Code online, is the ethics code.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I missed you saying that if you said it.
Well, we were running quickly. Sorry.
Yeah, you were
We're moving quickly, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
So yeah, if anyone,
where to find.
and my phone number should be at the back, or the staff can get you my phone number. I'm happy to discuss it and go over any provisions you might have questions about at any time. But there's so many different technicalities, it wouldn't be useful for everyone's time to try and cover at a higher level of detail than this, so.
Okay, my recollection of the purpose of this was just to do a refresher because
Yes.
either we have new board members or many of the board members that have been on the board, it's just been a long time since we've had to go through the certification. So it was, I think even maybe planned sooner, but due to COVID, things got delayed and then they got delayed again. So I think it's just good to set kind of expectations.
Yes.
Anyone can interrupt anytime and ask you questions.
Absolutely,
Would that be
please,
okay?
that would be
Okay.
great.
Thank you.
So that was all ethics, so we'll pause again. If anyone has any ethics questions, the types of things that apply to you, conflicts of interests, business with the city, those sorts of things.
Are there any questions right now on maybe go back the previous two slides regarding the ethics?
Yes, that one there. So. Then you're not in trouble.
Steve, is it reasonable to give some examples of conflict of interest?
Well, certainly if you're representing private, I mean, many of these topics overlap each other. So if you have an economic interest in some business and they were to be seeking business from the library, that might be a conflict of interest that you would have a concern for. Some cases you're able to accuse yourself away from the conflict. In some cases you would just be blocked from city rules, would not allow you to be able to contract with the city in certain instances. So. If you start looking at it closely, most of the provisions sort of overlap with each other. It's all sort of the same type of conflicts that we're concerned with in the ethics code.
Conversations that we have as in the subcommittees and committees being, I assume most of them are open to Public Information Act type of.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a
rulings
public
and stuff.
meeting. All the information being presented is
So
public
if there is
information.
ever something that is considered confidential, is there some sort of obligation for those things to be explicitly marked or mentioned or?
The context would be very clear that if it was something, if we went into an executive session, then it would be clear that the information being discussed was confidential. So I don't think there'll ever be any confusion on that issue.
And is conflict of interest something that is there a clear guidance as to how that could come up in a certain topic or in an agenda or things like that? Is there?
Well, again, the primary example is where you would have some sort of economic interest that would be implicated in the board's decision-making process. So the primary example being the board is recommending a contract with an entity of which you have an ownership interest in, extends to, family members to a certain extent and that sort of thing. There are ways in which you could get in trouble. So it's always best, again, I don't want to try and get into too much detail and give you the wrong direction. So if you do have any questions about something like that, if there's a topic that will be discussed by the board, part of your deliberations, please contact me and I'll be able to assist you directly on a specific question. So.
Sure. Thank you.
So I think, yeah, the next topic is Public Information Act, Open Records, also known as, it applies to almost anything any sort of information that the library department has, including your information that you might possess. So if we get a request for information, you might be asked to produce, or your emails might be released and that sort of thing. So something to keep in mind. It doesn't matter what form the records are. It could be a paper record, it could be electronic records, recording of the meeting, that sort of thing. If the determination is made that the library or the city would like to withhold those records, the process is that the library department would contact me, and we would go through the process of making an argument to the Texas Attorney General's office. And I see a typo, but asking for the information to be withheld under one of the many exceptions that are included in the state law. So that was it on open records. It's really not something that will involve board members ever. Go ahead.
I know this is for the benefit of the board, but Edward, can you go back to the forms and media, I think, here. Right, I think it's important to emphasize that public information can be kept in telephones as well, smartphones, text messages. Any
Yes.
communication is considered public record.
Yes, and there's clear guidance from the Texas Attorney General on this point, that any communications in writing is considered a record and can be asked for. So it's a better practice if you're ever doing any business, library business, to make use of the city's email system. I guess you all have accounts, I don't know. Anyway.
I don't think we do, actually.
You don't, okay. Well, emails are, if you're emailing with Ramiro, it'll be automatically saved in the city system, so those records will be automatically preserved. If you're texting, then you're, doing library business, it's a bad practice, because then you have to figure out a way to how to preserve those records so that you're not ever accused of hiding official communications or whatever.
Well, we've had previous discussions, for example, if a board member sends a friendly message to more than 6 or more board members regarding, we're going to go to the Katrina Ball, we're saving a table for you or something like that, would that be considered?
Right, so then we're moving into the open meetings questions as well, and the most important part of that is purely social interactions between board members would never rise to the level of being deliberations of library business. It's a better practice, again, not to have to make that argument, not to have to explain to anyone, so don't try and communicate directly with each other in any manner that could end up easily being a quorum, forwarding emails to each other, that sort of thing. Allow the city staff to perform that function for you. Ask for them to share the information that you want. And that way it's clearly a break between you so that there isn't any indication that it's a deliberation that's going on. So, open meetings. Meeting, again, the word I just used, any deliberation between a quorum of members at which a public business is discussed or considered, or at which any formal action is taken. So it doesn't, you don't even have to have agenda items, you don't have to have business items, action items, anytime you get together and talk about library business. So you have a social party and you're all there and you're talking about social things, and then somebody says, hey, let's talk about closing Brookhollow Branch Library. Now you've crossed into, you're having a public meeting in violation of the Open Meetings Act. So it's just, social gatherings are fine, but stay away from any library business that might impact. Yes, so I put in the definition of deliberation straight out of the statute. Any issue within the jurisdiction of the body or public business. So I guess we covered that well enough. Go on. Meeting, again, it excludes social functions, conventions, and workshops. So, if you're not there talking about library business, but there's, it won't be a meeting if you aren't talking about library business. And that's the point that I was just making. And again, avoid talking about public business or policy if you are in a social gathering. People like to talk about walking quorums. City of San Antonio actually got in trouble 15 years ago, but it was a very clear, obvious violation of it where council members were going behind the wall and talking to each other and then calling different council member back. So the walking quorum concept is just a way of saying any obvious, attempts at getting around talking about business in public is a violation of the open meeting law. So don't string along a conversation where a quorum of the board will have discussed an issue. To have a meeting, you have to have a quorum of the body present in the room. We all know that. The meeting is for deliberating a library business and taking action on only items that have been posted. You can talk about if a thought occurs to you and you're like, you want to see discussion on this topic, you can ask that it be agendized for a future meeting, and you could actually even make a motion to that effect and allow that to see whether or not the board would like to discuss it. But it isn't a substantive discussion, it's just a discussion about whether or not the board will have a substantive discussion in the future, if that makes sense.
You're saying that the members of the board can make a motion, vote on the motion, in order to add something to the agenda, so that they have to have an agenda.
Exactly. You could discuss whether or not you want to discuss it. Some of you might feel that other people, that it's been discussed and you don't see the need for having another agenda item in the future on it. It would be in a future meeting at which it would be posted for the public to know.
Clarification is where, at one point, will a board member entertain or suggest or propose, since we follow the agenda, there's not like an open forum or...
I'm not a Robert's Rules expert. When I started with the city, I was trained to say that whatever the chair's reasonable determinations are satisfactory legally. So if a chair recognizes a board member says, hey, I think this is an important topic, we really should come back and talk about it, then you could, as the library director and your executive committee, easily just take that note under advisement and promise that you'll put it on the next agenda. Or if the board wants to vote on it and say, we really are, this is important, we're going to talk about this on the next agenda, we're going to vote on it right now. That would be entirely appropriate both under Texas open meeting law and Robert's Rules of Order.
So they would essentially just need to be recognized by the chair and given an opportunity to speak.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so next slide. Executive sessions, we don't do them a whole lot with the library board, but occasionally an occasion arises where executive session means that it's closed to the public, so we can have a conversation amongst ourselves. Typically, you're going to have me or someone else from the city attorney's office here with you. It's not necessarily legally, because there are some topics that you don't need an attorney, human resources type questions. Oftentimes, real estate is a very important topic for city council to have executive session meetings about contract negotiations. The discussion would happen in private, meaning that not open to the public, only staff who are necessary for the discussion to go forward. But you won't be able to make a decision within the executive session. You would have to come out and have a public vote to have an agenda item approved. You can't approve in an executive session.
Executive session like that, I think I joined the board in a time when we had quite a few executive sessions. When joining the executive session in a scenario like that, I understand that you're not always going to have to be present depends on the nature of the discussion, but will there always be someone from the city that will remind members of the board that the information that's being discussed is confidential and our obligation to maintain that confidentiality?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I don't imagine there's any need. I've always been at most of the executive sessions that I can remember, and I'd be happy to play that role and assist in that way.
And then in yeah. Right. Yeah, I do recall that. Yeah. And then for topics like that, if there is some type of conflict of interest, it's up to each person to determine that whether they should be part of the conversation, or is that something that
Well, it
the
would,
staff or the board does, in unison?
right, in the first instance, it's always up to the board member to determine whether or not that they feel like there's, because sometimes you might recuse yourself even when the rules wouldn't require you to recuse yourself, so you should, if you feel like there's any potential conflict, consult with the library staff or with myself, and then make a determination whether you want to recuse yourself or not, so. That is the city's policy, and as far as make sure that you aren't influencing the discussion in any way by not being present.
Thank you.
Rules of procedure, so the board rules state specifically Robert's Rules of Order be used as a starting point, but not, same thing with the city council. They're not strictly followed. You can find versions of Robert's Rules of Order that are hundreds of pages long, and unlimited number of special cases and things. And there really is no need for that, and in my opinion, it would be a violation of state law to try and enforce very strict Robert's Rules of Order. The only thing that matters is that we're a governmental body. We comply with the Open Meetings Act. We have meetings with, where and majority rules. A quorum of the board meets, and the majority rules and can vote. Ordinarily, it's going to be run by the chair, who's going to make determinations, but the chair's decisions ultimately are not final because any board member could challenge the chair's ruling, and the board as a whole could overrule the chair. So it's a very democratic process, and so I don't worry too much about special Robert's Rules of Order technicalities, because again, I don't think that they're necessary. And
I did have a question from our agenda item 16 earlier, where I had asked for a motion, and Linda mentioned that because it came from a committee, that no motion was required, that we just went straight to vote.
right.
And my concern with the way that was I recognize that that's correct according to the way that the agenda item was added, but my concern with it is that outside of the naming committee's recommendation, which I stand behind, I think it was, well-informed, the other board members didn't actually get an opportunity to hear anything about the person that we were naming for, like you would normally do in like a presentation. Maybe if we compare it with the agenda item number 17, where Kathy kind of said, okay, here's the details. So I just wonder when this isn't about the rule, this is about the agenda creation, maybe if we're looking for an opportunity for other board members to get additional information, that should probably either be presented in the agenda item, or it should be maybe not presented that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just thinking maybe we should have, as part of the presentation of the agenda item, included some information. I don't know if anyone else cares, but yeah. We would have questions, yeah. That may have been me just having Jessica vote. But I don't know if everybody knew. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so everyone already knew. Okay, then we're good. Yeah. Just to have maybe, in the past, we've sometimes presented like an obituary, a little bit about the person, just so that everyone, including the public that may be watching, can answer the question, who was that?
Sense to me, but procedurally, I think it's just, from a committee, a recommendation from a committee is essentially the same thing as a motion and a second. It makes sense logically because the committee would have members of the board already, so you already have multiple members presenting an item to the full board. But typical procedure, motion second, and then discussion. So at that point, it would be either a presentation from staff or from one of the board members, or
As
ad
a
hoc
clarification,
discussion.
well, technically, if you're saying that a committee making a recommendation doesn't need a motion, but doesn't the chair reserves the right to ask for a motion and a second, and then go into discussion.
Yes, I think that's fine. Again, the purpose of a motion and a second is just to make sure that the board isn't wasting time talking about items that wouldn't have support other than the one person. So motion and second means you have at least 2 votes. A recommendation from a committee means you have the votes of the members of that committee on the
So the
board.
clarification, it can be done both ways.
Either way, yes.
Okay. Either way.
And next slide. So I didn't write this, but I mean, the role of the chair is to be, should be the most important part of, not the attorney or anyone else, debating Robert's rules. The chair should just try and be fair and make sure that everybody feels part of the process, and, is ready to make decisions, provides guidance, direction, encourages. That's good. Okay. All right. Well, that all seems self-explanatory to me. I'm sorry. That's my name and phone number, email. If anybody has any questions ever, please call me. Very happy to help you. Again, I won't answer ethics questions, specific ethics questions, without talking to Cam, because I want to make sure you get the right answer. So. Sure.
I second, yes.
Multiple seconds, I don't think we need to vote. Thank you all.